Ah, the internet, where we get our daily laughs, adorable cat pictures, inspiration to start a regional revolution, make a living, and have unlimited access to an infinite amount of information. But if you've been paying attention to the headlines recently, you may have heard there's a worldwide war on its freedoms. According to Vint Cerf, the man who's often called the father of the internet, the real war for the net is governments who want to control it, and that includes the U.S. government. If you think about protecting the population and observing our conventional freedoms, the two are really very much in tension. Recently, politicians like Marco Rubio, Darrell Issa, Rand Paul, and Ron Paul have called for internet freedom. The GOP officially supported internet freedom in its 2012 party platform, calling for full constitutional protection from government overreach of personal data, and believe that users should retain the right to control the use of their data by third parties, as did the Democrats on their platform. President Barack Obama pledged his support on a recent Reddit Ask Me Anything. So if everyone thinks the internet should remain free and open, why are we even talking about this? Remember when the internet went on strike back in January? More than 75,000 websites banded together to collectively protest against two proposed pieces of legislation called SOPA and PIPA. Though intended to curb the distribution of pirated material on the web by punishing websites hosting illegal content, critics say it gave too much power to the federal government without due process, that it was too vague and was already outdated. It, in essence, would have punished websites for illegal content uploaded by their users, so it essentially punished the messenger. SOPA and PIPA were only the first of many attempts to regulate the internet. Back in April, the House passed CISPA, a piece of cybersecurity legislation that's designed to create a more secure internet by allowing internet service providers to share personal consumer information with the government, but without a court order. And then there's the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement and Trans-Pacific Partnership, or ACTA and TPP. These two treaties were pushed by Pacific Rim nations, but met as much opposition as SOPA did stateside. Now all this legislation is stalled and at the point of floundering, thanks in part to some energetic internet activism. Nothing like a threat against free access to cat videos to get the people riled up. And as it stands now, the debate over internet freedom remains pretty fluid. In response, a group called Free Press issued an Internet Declaration of Freedom, guidelines for future internet policy with signatories like the American Civil Liberties Union, Mozilla, Reddit, Amnesty International, and a really tiny handful of lawmakers. Talking to WebPro News, Josie Levy of Free Press explains the declaration.
The first is expression, which is basically don't censor the internet. The second is access, promoting universal access to high-speed and affordable broadband networks. The third is openness, and we actually have a fairly poetic way of expressing that. Keep the internet an open network where everyone is free to connect, communicate, write, read, watch, speak, listen, learn, create, and innovate.
The declaration also calls for protections for innovation and privacy. And Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak explains to RT why he thinks these values are important.
That the gatekeepers, those who can turn on and off switches, allow certain things, disallow other things, allow who gets to send me data about a new movie rather than everyone have an equal say-so of reaching me. Yeah, I fear that very strongly.
But how do you regulate a virtual global network that knows no geographical sovereign bounds? Trying to govern the internet has always been an iffy thing. Right now, the internet is very U.S.-centric. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, which assigns domain names IP addresses, is located in California, though it's comprised of representatives from more than 100 countries and some corporations. Still, it was chartered under the U.S. Commerce Department. Despite half of internet users being in Asia, there's a push from countries like China, India, and Russia for less U.S. control over the internet and for more United Nations power. The problem with that is, as NPR points out, ICANN's current approach under which a variety of groups oversee the internet. It's the multi-stakeholder principle at work. If the internet were brought under UN control, governments alone could control the internet. And coming up this December, the next meeting of the UN's telecommunications body, the ITU, which crafted, along with its member states, the International Telecommunications Regulations. But that was all way back in 1988, before the modern internet. The ITU is set to update those regulations and talk more about internet governance in this year's conference in Dubai. The U.S. Senate has already voted to oppose giving the UN more control over the internet. And in September 2012, the biggest internet corporations like Google, Facebook, Yahoo, AOL combined powers and formed the Internet Association, which by sheer financial power and internet clout alone could be the most influential lobbying group for the internet. With so many groups vying for influence over future internet policy and regulation, and a seemingly large disconnect between policymakers, internet companies, and internet users, the debate over internet freedoms is far from over, but it's one that has massive implications for the future. Just make sure you're paying attention.